other agencies, because all the other agencies downstream that are part of that licensing proceeding, they want to see more water go through the diversion tunnel.
Who does?
The other parties to that
yes, of
proceeding
course.
are, if I remember right, were Mendocino County, Sonoma County, and a number of the irrigation districts, but they were all, you know, the vast majority of them were down in Sonoma County. So they're all going to want to see more water go through the diversion tunnel.
Yeah, but how would this impact the current plan by the Covelo Indian tribe to resolve the problem and make sure there's no more diversions ever out through that tunnel?
Well, the only concern of the Covelo Indian community is anadromous fish. That's their concern. And when you've got an abundance of rain where there's high flows and there's just surplus water flowing out to the ocean, you know, I'm sure if you went to the community and proposed a plan to show that you're only going to be taking water through the diversion, extra water through the diversion tunnel during certain high flow periods, as monitored through metering.
Isn't that part of the existing? The existing proposal, the plan that was going to resolve all the water wars. It already includes an extra 5,000 to 8,000 acre feet that would come through during the high water flow season, I believe.
Right, but you're in emergencies, just like Mr. Manfield said. You're now down to 37,000 acre feet, okay? So that's justification for seeking a modification. And if you can convince the Indians that it's not going to hurt their fishery, I don't see why they wouldn't agree to it. That's all I'm saying. But to do that, somebody's got to ask FERC, and the only way you ask FERC is to file a petition.
Further comment on the continuing involvement in the feasibility study, which is a 50% local share with the Army Corps of Engineers. And yes, when it originally came up 3 years ago, the figure was at least $5 million. So it was known 3 years ago when we originally entered into the agreement that it was going to be an extremely expensive project. And so the fact that it might be $6 million now is in the ballpark of the original estimate of the cost of the feasibility study. But we are a major player. If we were to lose interest, it could indeed kill the feasibility study.
Well, I think to inform the city council so that we can make a recommendation to you about, I think we should ask the city attorney or ask you to ask our city attorney to look into those questions that you raised. We should get a copy of that manual. I mean, I was thinking that too, that everybody has lots of suppositions about this can happen or that can happen, but that somewhere it's written what the law, what it can happen.
Well, there's federal regulations. You don't have to pay for that. And then there's, like Ross said, there's an actual operation manual, which they are required by law to give you if you request it.
Right, so I think
a fee for the copying costs, but under the Freedom of Information Act, they have to give it to you if you request it.
So I think that our city attorney should review that the issue about flood water, and I mean that maybe the flood water conservation water, maybe that's part of the policy, or how we might be able to amend that policy. And then that thing you just brought up about a petition to FERC, and just have him report back to us, maybe with a memo that might help us make a decision about continuing our participation or not.
Further discussion or questions? Further public comment? Just briefly, you had a chance to look at the cost-sharing agreement for the feasibility study. Given everything that's come before, we may consider this not less than relevant, but it has to do, the major issue is what happens when an original participant decides to drop out of the study, and then if the feasibility is showing that we're moving closer to the possibility of a project, and a original participant wanted back in, this cost-sharing agreement discusses the process by which Redwood Valley could come back in, what they would have to pay in back fees, percentages. That's on page 2 of the draft, which Dave's report came up with. And then what would happen if a new agency wanted to participate, for example, the Hopland Water District or the Millview Water District or the Hopland Band of Pomos wanted to participate, how they could join in. And so one of the concerns of the subcommittee that worked on this was, if we get close to the end, if we can afford to conclude the feasibility study, and if we get close to the end, and it appears all of a sudden that it's feasible, and all of a sudden we have a number of agencies who want in, and they took none of the original risk of funding the feasibility study, how would they come back in? And here's the process. They have to pay back and pay a percentage of the administrative costs and the interest that would have been used on the money, et cetera. So this is all here, and if there's no, we need to decide by March 4th whether the wording here on this cost-sharing agreement is good. So I wonder if there's any, I mean, if we want to take time now or not to look at the fine print of this cost-sharing agreement. I would hope we wouldn't have to look at any fine print now. Again, our own attorney was the one that drafted this based on recommendations from a subcommittee made up of myself, Candace Horsley, and Richard Shoemaker from the IWPC. And so they deal separately with Redwood Valley because they are a special case. They were an original participant, and they would be given a certain amount of time to come back in at a certain rate. And then there would be subsequent participants who wanted to buy in later.
That's always been.
So if there's any concerns about the wording here, I suggest you actually email those concerns maybe through Jane to Dave Report as we get ready to adopt this wording. Hopefully, more jurisdictions would participate if the feasibility study makes sense to continue with. Further, is there any public comment on this cost-sharing agreement involving the feasibility study?
City manager.
City Manager Chambers?
I just want to clarify, Mayor, that Dave is out, not available until, I think it is 18th or something like that.
Of March?
Right. So I don't think he's available between now and the 4th of March.
Okay, then we'll work that, we'll figure out a way to work that out. We'll delay the decision by IWPC.
Well, just know our firm can do, whatever needs to be done. I mean, the
Evidently,
client deserves the service, and you're going to get the service, so.
Big S, Superman.
Each of the agencies on IWPC is having their own attorneys look at this wording right now, and they've all been asked to suggest wording changes in here, and evidently there are minor concerns that aren't momentous. Yes?
I think before you waste our money, since I live in the city, before you waste our money, I don't think you should do this. I don't think you should enter into it until you have basic questions answered.
We're already involved.
Well, I know you're involved, but I don't want to see you put any more into it until we get the basic questions answered, period. Because enough is enough. And where you're going with this until we do, and not only that, this project being completed isn't going to be completed in my lifetime. And you got to have the funds to build it afterwards and look at the economy where we're at now. But there's just some basic questions that need to be answered, and they should have been the ones that were answered before we got this far.
Yep.
And you need to go back and take care of them. And once you do that, then make your call and go forward, and then you can find granting and other sources that help and assist you. That's my comment.
Councilmember Thomas.
I think in response to Mr. Mayfield's concern that there is a considerable interest in among members of the IWPC in making sure that further expenditures are subject to review. Further expenditures by the Corps of Engineers are scrutinized.
And regarding audits, the IWPC was very interested in audits, and there may very well be an audit of the feasibility study expenditure so far. However, the audit will be taken out of
The money we
feasibility
pay.
study itself. So the funds for the audit would be 50% funded by the current funders of the local share of the feasibility study. Further public comment?
You think that would be included in that administrative overhead they charge us? Or?
John